Hey everybody, it's Mr. Smith here. Welcome back to day 15 of week 4 of new learning, new material. I hope you guys are all safe at home and healthy. Today we're going to look at representing data using dot plots. Our learning targets for today: I can describe the information presented in tables and dot plots. I can use tables and dot plots to represent distributions of data. I can describe the center and spread of data from a dot plot. I can use a dot plot to represent the distribution of a data set and answer questions about real-world situations. And I can use center and spread to describe data sets, including what is typical in a data set. This word typical we're going to see throughout the lesson today, especially when we start analyzing these dot plots. Our standards for today are listed here, which basically link right to our learning targets. In your warm-up today, you had these five data sets, and it says 10 sixth grade students at school were each asked 5 survey questions. Their answers to each question are shown here. And we have these 5 questions. You have to match these 5 questions with what it should look like over here with the data set. So if you flip a coin 10 times, how many heads do you get? So your probability of getting a head is about 50%. So for each student, it should be right around 5. So that's why our data set C would represent this the best. You might go over or under the number of, that 5 a little bit, but you should get a few heads as you're flipping. Obviously, it wouldn't be E because there's more than 10, and same for B, there's more than 10. A definitely would not work because you have zeros. You should get at least 1 head as you're flipping. And then 6 is 2 uniform. There's no way, very rare that somebody is going to get all 6s. When we look at how many books did you read in the last year? Now this one, I know some of you guys probably chose data set A because you didn't really read any books. However, for this particular group, it is data set E, because data set A will work for a different question later on. For question 3, what grade are you in? Data set D, it said 10 sixth grade students at a school were each asked these questions, so each of the students should have been in 6th grade. That's why D works for this one. How many dogs and cats do you have? This is where data set A comes in, because some people don't have any dogs or cats, and typically, 1 or 2 or 3, 10, is a little more logical. I know some of you may have way more cats or dogs at home, which is fine. And then question 5, how many inches are in a foot? Data set B, because there are only 12 inches in a foot. There are not more than 12, and there's not less than 12. And then you had a question, how are survey questions 3 and 5 different from the other questions? Basically with question 3 and 5, so what grade are you in and how many inches are in 1 foot? For this particular group of students, there is no variability. That means there's no difference in their answers. Their answers should all be the same. If you look at the other data sets, A, C, and E, there are different numbers for each one. Now we're going to be creating dot plots. It says Priya wants to know if basketball players on a men's team and a women's team have had prior experience in international competitions. She gathered data on the number of times the players were on a team before 2016. So this is just whether they've participated in international competitions. It does not mean that these are not good players. So when you create a dot plot, you take your data, and then next thing you do is create a frequency table. A frequency table just tells you how many of each of these options occurred. So how many zeros, how many people have been in 0 competitions, how many people have been in 1, how many people said they were in 2, how many said they were in 3, and how many said they were in 4. And we're going to do that with the men's team and the women's team. So when you complete your frequency table, you're going to put the number of times you see that in your data. So if you look at the number of zeros in the data for the men's team, there's 10. So if you were to go through and count these zeros, there are 10 zeros. For the women's team, there are only 3 zeros, 1, 2, and 3. And you can do that throughout the rest of the time, the rest of the table. For the men's, there were no players who had been in 2 prior competitions, so you just put 0. So if that data set doesn't, or that number does not come up in your data, you just put 0. Now we're going to create dot plots from this information on the frequency table. So a dot plot kind of looks like a number line, and you have the numbers on the bottom, and then above the number line, that number, you're going to put dots for each time that number was chosen or that number was given. So if we look at our frequency of zeros, there's 10, so there are 10 dots above 0. For one prior competition, there's only 1, so we only put 1 dot. For 2 prior competitions, there's 0, so you don't put any dots. And the same for 3 and 4. You just follow through what it says on the frequency table. So here's the men's team, and then here's the women's team. The women's team is a little more spread out, where the men's team kind of is more focused on the 0 part. Now, sorry guys. What do they tell you about the competition participation of the players on the men's team and the players on the women's basketball team? Basically, it's saying that majority of the men's players have not competed in any international competitions prior to 2016, because we have 10 out of the 12 players are on 0. If we look at the women's team, it shows that majority of the women's players have had prior competition experience in international competitions, because you have 9 out of the 12 players on the women's team who have had at least been in at least one prior competition. Now, analyzing data in a data plot, it says 25 6th grade students. When you're doing your data plot or dot plot on one of the Google Docs, what you're going to be given this number, a number line with little tick marks to where the numbers go. What you're going to do is you're going to go in the space below that number line, hit your space bar a bunch of times until you get underneath that mark, and put your number. And you're going to do the same for each mark and put your number, so that'll build your numbers here. Sorry. That's how you put your numbers on the bottom. For above the number line, you're going to go in the space above the number line and go hit your space bar again until you get over top of the number that you want to put it in. And you're just going to put an X. That's simple enough. Just use an X. You don't have to worry about dots or anything like that. You can just put an X. If you need to go more, then just go more spaces above. If you need to make more room, hit enter to give you some extra room to put those X's. If you have questions about that, please join one of us on Zoom so we can walk you through by sharing our screen to show you exactly how to do it. All right, back to analyzing data in a dot plot. So 25 6th grade students answered the question, how many hours do you generally spend on homework each week? The dot plot shows the number of hours per week that these 25 students reported spending on homework. What percentage of the students reported spending 1 hour on homework each week? So you have to look at the 1 hour. There are 5 students. And you're going to do 5 divided by the 25 whole number of students that worked on it, and you get 0.2 if you were using your calculator. Then you take that 0.2 and you multiply it by 100 to get you 20, which would give you 20%. This is going back to something we did earlier in the year, so finding percentages. What percentage of the students reported spending 4 or fewer hours on homework each week? So you're going to count the number of dots above 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And that comes up, you get 17. 17 divided by 25 gives you 0.68. You take that 0.68 and multiply it by 100 and you get 68, which is 68%. Now, would 6 hours per week be a good description of the number of hours this group of students spend on homework per week? 6 hours here. There's a whole lot under 6 and very few above 6, so that wouldn't be a good description on the typical amount. 1 hour still would not be, because there's a whole lot of students that spend more than 1 hour and only one that spends less than 1 hour. So if we were to look at this, between 3 and 4 would be a good description, because if you were to look between 3 and 4, we have about the same amount above or below that spot. So between 3 and 4 would be a good description of the number of hours this group of students spends on homework. Now, discussion board posts. Again, make sure you are including your reasoning. Be specific. Explain why. Explain how you know. When you respond to discussion board posts, explain why you agree or disagree. Google Docs submission or problems with explanation, make sure you're including an explanation. Here's the path to follow to submit a Google Doc assignment. Short answer questions. Again, explain. That is something that we have been putting on several answers that you guys have been leaving. Make sure you're checking your feedback and you're responding to your feedback from your teachers. The next activities, you're going to create a dot plot using Google Docs. Then you're going to analyze some dot plots. One's a swimming class. One is through Desmos. One's about movies with a discussion. You have a cool down, and then there's an honors Google Doc that needs to be completed. Remember office hours for your teachers. Mr. Smith, Mrs. Tyler, Mrs. Langen, Mr. Lenhart. They're through Zoom. You can also email us through Schoology if you have any questions. We have been able to open up, at times, immediate Zoom sessions to allow you to work one-on-one with your teacher. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Don't just leave a comment and something. Send us a message through Schoology. That comes to us immediately. If you're struggling with how to submit something through Google Docs, or if you're not able to have access to something in Google Docs, please let us know. Make sure you're making a copy of any Google Doc assignment. Again, hope you guys do well, and look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in our Zoom sessions. Have a good day. Bye.